At 14:07 local time, FA-18 Super Hornets were screaming toward these three irreplaceable Iranian aircraft at Kerman Airport. Overhead, a circling drone was relaying footage back to the strike group. And what it saw wasn't good. The Iranians were getting ready to put these birds in the air at any moment. And just as the F-18s punched to full afterburner, an Iranian operator popped out looking to put their faces on a t-shirt. Both FA-18 pilots, call signs Raven 1 and Raven 2, had swung wide east through Volusia Stand to avoid everything. The desert didn't cooperate. Raven 1's an ALR-67, the radar warning receiver that tells a pilot who's hunting you and how seriously. Lit up with a tone every fighter pilot memorizes and never wants to hear. Phased array acquisition at fast pulse repetition, a Tor M1 battery inside 12 kilometers. The battery had been sitting cold in the foothills with its radar off, the missile defense equivalent of a bouncer sitting in a dark corner of a club, arms crossed, watching the door. No small talk, no warning look across the room. The instant the Super Hornets crossed the horizon, it skipped the search phase entirely and went straight to fire control. No, who are you? No, can I see some ID? Just a fist already in the air before you finished walking through the door. Raven 1's hands were already moving, left to the chaff switch, right tightening on the stick. Think of the fourth missile as a telephone pole doing Mach 2.8 that pulls 28 Gs in the terminal phase, roughly 4 times what the pilot can sustain before the lights go out. The phased array hops frequencies faster than most jammers can follow, like trying to talk to someone who changes languages mid-syllable. The surviving crews had learned exactly one trick in 11 days of war. Fire once, shut down, and run as fast as you can before the Americans can shoot back. Raven 1 hauled the stick into his lap and pulled 6 Gs. The horizon whipped vertical and the desert floor filled his canopy. Behind him, an ALR-214 dispenser chaff cycled, aluminum-coated fibers blooming into a radar ghost the same size as the jet. The ALQ-214 jammer pumped false range data into the tracking frequency. It pointed the missile at empty air 500 meters behind the aircraft. Raven 2 broke the opposite direction, splitting the formation and forcing the battery crew to pick one target. They picked Raven 1. The chap and the jammer's false data corrupted the tracking solution, while 6 Gs of geometry shift moved the jet clean out of the seeker's prediction cone. Warhead detonated behind and below. Shrapnel distance, no impact, but close enough to tickle the airframe and ruin your flight suit. Inside the Tor M1, the battery commander slammed the master switch and the scope went dark. The driver was already engaging tracks beneath them. 2 weeks ago, the commander would have fired again, but 11 days of watching America turn Iran into a parking lot gave him second thoughts. But the Tor didn't need a hit, it needed 45 seconds. The 6G break threw both jets 12 miles south of the planned route. That put them out of the empty desert corridor and into the foothills where an Iranian surveillance radar operator sat in a mountain pass scanning southeast. He'd driven his mobile unit out of his Fostavon Providence ahead of the first week's strikes and set up in terrain the coalition hadn't prioritized. A move that required either exceptional initiative or exceptional paranoia. In Iran's military, the two were often indistinguishable. He couldn't shoot anything down, didn't need to. He picked up the handset and gave Karaman what the scope showed. 2 fighterized returns heading northeast, medium altitude, moving with the kind of purpose that meant someone's day was about to get significantly worse. That phone call routed through a landline because 11 days of American strikes had turned Iranian military communications into the world's most expensive game of telephone, reached the IRGC garrison before the Ravens finished assembling their formation. While the report raced toward the airfield, Raven 2 discovered what 6 Gs had done to his targeting pod. The Atlar's gimbal you see here uses fiber optic gyroscopes to hold the infrared image steady, compensating for every movement the aircraft makes at 500 knots. 15 seconds at 6 Gs had precessed those gyroscopes off their reference. The image now jittered across the desert floor like trying to read a street sign through a bus windshield on a gravel road. He cycled the pod to standby. The jitter persisted. What Raven 2 didn't know, what nobody would confirm until maintenance debrief back on the Lincoln, was that the gyroscopes hadn't just precessed. The 6G snap had microfractured the fiber optic coupler feeding the reference laser. The pod wasn't drifting, it was guessing. Below 15,000 feet, the narrower field of view would compensate, with the target filling enough of the frame that the drift couldn't lose it. But 15,000 feet put him inside the engagement envelope of every short-range weapon the IRGC still had. The Tor hadn't just pushed them off route and into a surveillance radar. It had broken Raven 2's eyes and was about to force him into the altitude band where the ground defenses work best. At Kerman, a ground controller grabbed the field telephone mid-ray line, listened for 4 seconds, and sprinted across the apron. Fighters inbound. Fuel trucks lurched clear of wheel chocks within seconds, a response time that would have impressed any Air Force on Earth, considering these crews had spent 11 days watching American precision munitions turn everything around them into modern art installations. Inside the cockpit, the flight engineer was already throwing switches on the overhead panel. APU start sequence, the beginning of the 4 to 5 minute spool that feeds compressed air to each of the 4 Solovia turbofans at roughly 90 seconds per engine. If every step went right, the 1176 could be taxiing before the Americans arrived. 8,000 miles away at Creech Air Force Base, a Raper sensor operator watched the scramble unfold in real time. The operator keyed the satellite link. Activity at the target. Engine start on the Heavy. When the Raper's fuel state crossed bingo, 20 hours on station, longer than most people spend awake in a day, and the mission wasn't done, but the gas was. The sensor operator swept the apron one last time, time-stamped the frame, and turned south toward Djibouti. The screen went to empty desert. The replacement Raper was 30 minutes out. The Ravens were 25. For the next 5 minutes, nobody on the American side could see Karaman Airfield. The Ravens circling while fuel burned and the 1176 crew raced through their checklist with nobody watching. But here's what the Americans couldn't see during those 5 blind minutes. The 1176 wasn't just spooling engines to evacuate. Ground crews were loading crates through the rear cargo ramp, long olive green cases that didn't match any standard supply manifest. Whatever the IRGC was trying to fly out of Karaman was worth more to them than the aircraft itself. The Al-Udeid CAOCC air traffic control for the entire war held the Ravens in orbit. No ISR coverage meant no weapons release authorization. Standard procedure that made perfect sense from a headquarters 900 miles away where the coffee's hot and the ejection seats are theoretical, and made no sense at all from the cockpit of an aircraft burning fuel it couldn't spare. At Karaman, those same 5 minutes bought everything the garrison needed. The ground controller had Zu-23 gun trucks rolling from the motor pool before the first orbit completed. By minute 3, a MISOG 2-man manpad team stood on the maintenance hangar roof with a launch tube on the operator's shoulder. The MISOG 2 is Iran's copy of the Chinese QW-1, which was China's copy of the Russian Igla, which makes the MISOG 2 a photocopy of a photocopy. And like any third-generation knockoff, it works just well enough to ruin your afternoon. The replacement Raper checked in at 23,000 feet, an MQ-9 with a multispectral targeting system you see here, good enough to read a license plate from 4 meters up, controlled by a sensor operator in a trailer at Creech Air Force Base through what amounts to be a very expensive Xbox setup with a 600 millisecond satellite delay. The operator slewed the turret to the apron and the picture came in clean. All 3 confirmed. APU hot on the Heavy. Recommend immediate. Hold released. 16 minutes to target. The broken targeting pod and the 5-minute head start, both courtesy of the Tor M1, were waiting at the other end. Raven 1 swept the airfield for maximum apt FLIR range. The advanced targeting forward-looking infrared pod slung under the jet's belly you see here, essentially a thermal telescope that lets the pilot study a target from far enough away that the people on the ground can't shoot back. Lead's pod was clean, stable image, the kind of image you design a targeting system to produce. Two pickup trucks with Zu-23 tube twin-barreled anti-aircraft guns sat at opposite ends of the runway, north and south. The Zu-23 fires 23mm rounds at 800 to 1,000 per minute per barrel. No radar, no signature on the RWR, the AK-47 of anti-aircraft guns. The gunner doesn't aim so much as just let it rip and hope for the best. 70 meters from the P-3F on the maintenance hangar roof, the man-pad operator was clearly visible on the Raper's infrared feed. Raven Lund could see the tube on his shoulder and the intercept geometry he'd already set up. Between the Zu-23's hosing the sky and the MISOG-2 waiting for the engine exhaust, Kerman's defenses formed an equation. Come in high and GPS jamming ruins your bomb. Come in low and the ground defenses ruin your day. The weapons they carried, GBU-38 jams, 500-pound GPS-guided bombs, have a circular error probable of 5 meters under clean conditions. That puts the weapon on the fuselage. Under the Chinese-supplied GPS jamming concentrated around Iranian airfields, that circle swells to 25 meters. Against the building, it's still a hit. Against the parked aircraft, it's a crater on the taxiway and a P-3 that limps to another field. The only way to tighten accuracy was to release lower, cut the flight time from 90